Hello, my precious brothers and sisters. It is the 3rd of April on the early Bali calendar. It is the 14th of Aviv. On the Hillel calendar, the 16th of Aviv. So, some of you will have had Passover meals on Wednesday. Others would have had them last night when Jesus had his meal with his disciples, and yet others will be having them this evening at the same time as the Israelites leaving Egypt ate the whole lamb with the blood upon the doorposts while the destroyer passed over. So I just pray an incredibly meaningful and blessed time to you all in all of this. Just want to mention quickly the occult ritual that was done on the Hillel Passover on Wednesday with the release of the Artemis II rocket to circumvent the moon. Artemis is Diana, the god of the Ephesians. The other name is Isis. She is a hunter with a bow, and she also is the god of sudden death in the Greek myths. So definitely a tying up. I think the rocket was 322 feet, which ties it to the skull and crossbones 322. So there was no mistake, the releasing on the Hillel Passover. They always seem to use the Hillel calendar feasts for their occult rituals. So enough said about that. We don't want to talk about what the dark side is doing. I have really been focusing in this week on what the events were that unfolded from the time that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on the 10th to his appointment with the cross on the 14th. And something really jumped out of me, and the Holy Spirit has been emphasizing it considerably in these days. And so I really sense in my spirit, this is a prophetic word for the tip of the spear for the Manchild Company. And it concerns Jesus' instruction in Matthew 21:2. It says, he said to them, go into the village that is opposite you, and at once you will find a donkey tied. So this is at the edge of the village. There is a donkey tied and a colt with her. Matthew says, untie or loose and bring them to me. So Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, is the only one that mentions the mother donkey. So there's a bit of confusion here because one would think, okay, which one is Jesus going to ride on? Is he going to ride on the mother donkey, or is he going to ride on the colt? Well, what I'm going to share with you is going to clarify that. All the other Gospels speak only of the colt being brought. So what I want to focus on especially is this decree that Jesus issues, loose them and bring them to me. And he says, if anyone says anything to you, you will reply, the Lord needs them, and he will let them go without delay. So the authority of the words of Jesus and the needs of Jesus for heaven's purposes is superior to any other purpose of man on this earth. And it must be submitted to without delay. And then it carries on in verse 4. This happened that what was spoken of by the prophet might be fulfilled, saying to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, lowly and riding on a donkey and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So Matthew sort of furthers this confusion because he's riding on a donkey and on a colt. It doesn't seem to I mean, is he straddling the two? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's referring to a verse in Zechariah 9:9. And this is obviously in Hebrew, it's the Old Testament, and this clarifies everything. In Zechariah 9:9, it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king comes to you. He is just and has salvation. He is triumphant and victorious," it says in the Amplified. "He is patient, meek, and lowly, and riding on a donkey, upon a colt, the foal of a donkey." So we're going to look at the Hebrew of this, just to make totally clear what we're reading here. The word for donkey, the first word for donkey, riding on a donkey, is kamor. It means a male ass. So he's not riding on the mother of the colt. He's riding on the colt, which is also a donkey, obviously, or an ass, the King James Version says. That word kamor comes from a root word, H2560, which means to glow or to smear with pitch. Now, I've shared this many times before. The word for pitch means redemption price. So this male colt donkey is glowing. There is light coming from it, and it is totally covered by the redemption price. The Ark of Noah was smeared with pitch. I think the word is kafar. So let's go back to Zechariah 9. So he's riding on a male ass upon a colt. The word colt in Hebrew is ayir. It means bearing a burden, a young ass colt. So there is a burden that's going to be placed on this young colt, in the sense of not I've got a burden on my back, it's such a weight, I can't bear it. Not that kind of burden, but it's an appointed charge to carry for heaven's purposes. And this word ayir comes from the root word meaning to awaken or open the eyes. So this colt is a company that's been awakened, that is alert, that is aware of what's going on and has understanding of the times. So riding on a male donkey upon a colt that's going to bear heaven's burden and is awake and covered by the redemption price. And then it says the foal of a donkey. The word foal is ben in Hebrew. It means a firstborn son, a builder of the family name. We know that the Aramaic word ben means a son ready to be set in place and take over the father's business. There we see the bearing of the burden of heaven. And the setting in place is about the man-child being caught up to the right hand. Now, in Zechariah 9:9, that word donkey is mentioned twice. Meek and lowly and riding on a donkey, upon a colt, the foal of a donkey. The second word donkey is not kamor, but athon, which means a female donkey, which comes from a root word meaning strong and mighty. So Zechariah 9:9 completely clears up this thing of which donkey Jesus is riding on. He's riding upon the colt. The colt might be there with its mother, but it is the colt that is chosen for Jesus to ride on. The awakened one, the one covered by a redemption price, the one that is glowing, the one that is ready to be set in place and carry heaven's burden. So Matthew 21 carries on. They brought the donkey and the colt and laid their garments upon him, and he seated himself on the garments. So the different Gospels word it all slightly differently. So it's always good to, if you're studying a passage in the Gospels, to read it in all the Gospels because you get more information. Mark 11 verse 2 says, "You will find a colt tied which has never been ridden by anyone. Loose it and bring it here." And if anyone asks you, why are you doing this? Answer, the Lord needs it. So the word need is Kriya, Chreia. It means employment, requirement, business. There we have again the burden of heaven. Jesus needs this colt. Now, the female donkey represents the woman in Revelation 12. The male colt represents the Manchild Company. And the Gospels tell us that in this present time, Jesus needs the Man-Child Company to carry the burden of heaven. He wants to seat himself with his full weight upon this Man-Child Company. And this Man-Child Company has not been ridden by someone else, has not been used and abused and used for common use, set apart for holy purposes. And then Mark 11 verse 4 says, "They went away and found the colt tied at the door out in the open street, and they loosed it." That is in the Amplified, I'm reading it. However, the King James says, "And they went their way and found the colt tied by the door without," so outside the door, "in a place where two ways met, and they loosed him." So this colt, or this Man-Child Company, is tied at a fork in the road. That place where two ways meet is amphodon in Greek. It means a fork in the road. So the Man-Child Company has been tied up. The word tied means to bind, to be in bonds, put under obligation or duty. And the Lord has showed me that the Man-Child Company, many members of the Man-Child Company are feeling under obligation and bound and unable to move forward. And they're standing at a fork in the road, but they can't go anywhere because they have been bound there. Now, I want to point out to you that the place where the paths meet is also where wisdom stands in Proverbs 8. And she cries out, and it's the same place where she sends her maids to cry out. In the last message, I spoke of the trumpet, purple trumpet I saw in the sky, and how it's releasing a sound, and the maids represent the 144,000 virgins, the full number, the full tithe has been brought in, the whole of the first fruits offering redeemed from the earth has been brought. And Proverbs 8 verse 2 says, "At the gates, at the entrance to the town, at the coming in at the doors, she cries out." So that Mark tells us that the colt and the mother were tied up at the door, outside the door. They couldn't go in, they couldn't choose a path to walk on, at the entrance to the town. Now, the important thing is to correlate the scriptures. Mark 11 verse 2 says, Jesus instructed them, "Go into the village in front of you as soon as you enter it." So that's at the entrance to the town. That's where wisdom is standing, at the place where two ways meet, at the fork in the road. And beloved Man-Child Company, you are standing at a fork in the road, but you have felt bound and unable to move forward. But Jesus is issuing an instruction and a decree over you in this season, you who are part of this cult that Jesus has need of. He says, loose them and bring them to me. The word loose in Greek is luo. It means to loose a person who is tied up or fastened. It means to loose your shoes. Remember, Joshua was told to take off his shoes because the ground he was standing on was holy. Luo is used to loose a husband and wife who are joined together by matrimony. If any of you are going through divorce at the moment, know that God is working in it to loose you, to luo you, because he has need of you. Now, that might be a controversial thing to say because God instituted matrimony. However, sometimes people are unequally yoked and have married people they were not supposed to be married to. So the word is going over those who are appointed to be part of the Manchild Company. Loose them and bring them to me. Luo also means bound up in chains, a prisoner. Let them go, to loosen, undo, or dissolve any binding or anything that has been compacted together. So anything you have joined yourself to that is keeping you from Jesus using you, that rope, whatever that rope represents for you, whether it is a sickness that keeps you bedridden, whether it is wrong relationships, whether it is a duty or an obligation you feel that is keeping you from fulfilling what heaven has appointed for you to do at this particular moment in heaven's calendar. Luo also means to break up, demolish, and destroy any bondage that is upon you or upon your life that is preventing you moving forward and choosing the right path at the place where the paths meet. It also means to dissolve something coherent into parts. So what Jesus was doing basically was separating the cult from its mother. And we see that in Revelation 12, where the man-child is caught up to the throne, to the place of receiving governmental authority, and then the woman is also loosed to flee from the flood of the dragon and to be brought to the place prepared to be fed and kept safe. So it's not something that is damaging to the woman, this loosing. It's not something that is damaging because she is strong and mighty and she's brought forth the man-child company. Jesus, the man-child, has been manifested. However, there comes a leaving and a cleaving to heaven's purposes. And the bond that is keeping the cult from moving forward is destroyed. It is loosed. And I want to say to you, Manchild Company, Jesus has need of you. He has work for you to do. He knows where you are standing bound, where the two ways meet, unable to go one way or the other. And he is uttering a decree, loose him and bring him to me. Loose her and bring her to me. He is issuing a decree that you be loosed and brought face to face with him. The cult is the man-child company birthed from the woman who is strong and mighty, clothed with the sun in Revelation 12. Only the man-child company, the male cult, 144,000 are chosen to carry the full weight of the king as he rides into the city. They not only follow the Lamb wherever he goes, they carry the weight of his glory. The man-child has been tied up, bound, and held in place for this appointed moment. Whatever it is that has held you back from moving freely, preventing you from choosing the path wisdom directs you to, has been used by Jesus to keep you in place until the moment of being loosed and brought face to face, of receiving multiple garments, like Benjamin, meaning the son of the right hand, received when he was reunited with his brother Joseph in Egypt. Joseph gave all the brothers new garments, but Benjamin received 5 garments. Multiple garments were put on that colt for Jesus to sit on. You may have chafed against the binding and the rope, whatever that represents in your life, but it keeps you not from your appointment, but for your appointment to carry his glory until the right moment. If you had not been tied up in this manner at the place where the paths meet, you may have wandered off on the wrong path and done your own thing. So that rope has been keeping you for your appointment in the kairos moment when Jesus utters, "Loose the colt and bring it to me." And I really sense this Passover season that is the utterance of Jesus over the Manchild Company. We see it in the catching up of the man-child to the throne. There is a sudden separation between the man-child and the woman. Just as the Israelites in Egypt chafed against their bondage until the appointed moment of Moses being sent to decree, "Let my people go," they too were loosed and brought to God at Mount Sinai. Now, I want you to remember this. The loosing is something that happens in the spiritual realm. There is a cutting off, there is a dissolving, there is an untying, there is a discharging from prison, there's a removing of chains, there's a breaking up, a demolishing, and a destroying of the ability of that rope to hold you. The rope didn't dissolve. The rope still existed outside the door, but the colt was no longer held by it. I want you to remember that the loosing moment does not signify the immediate carrying of the full weight of the glorious King. I know that we have all been waiting and hoping for the pleroma to be poured out, for the 7 eyes, the 7 horns, the fullness of the Spirit to be poured out, the glory to be poured into his set apart ones. It says in the word that when Jesus comes in his glory with his angels, he will be seated on the throne of his glory. Who is the throne of his glory? It is the Manchild Company. Jesus was seated upon the colt. But there is still, from the time of loosing, there is a short journey until the full union. There's a short journey from the place where you were bound to face with Jesus. The garments have to be put on you. It's outside the city, and then Jesus' full weight is seated upon the colt. The Israelites, after they had been loosed from slavery and bondage, took 7 weeks to reach Mount Sinai. And on the 50th day, God came down in glory and fire and presented his marriage covenant to them. This is when the Jews celebrate the feast of Shavuot. And at that time, the book of Ruth is read in the synagogues. The book of Ruth describes about how the Gentile woman is married to the kinsman redeemer, Boaz. And she has a son called Obed, which means bond slave. So that's what the Feast of Shavuot highlights. It's Mount Sinai, it's the book of Ruth, read in the synagogues. But Paul says we have not come to Mount Sinai. We have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, where the church of the firstborn is. The spirits of just men made perfect. What does made perfect mean? It means the work has been fully completed in our spirits. And the completing is done by the outpouring of the fullness of the Spirit and full union. We call this feast Pentecost. It's when the first fruits of the Spirit were poured out on those 120 disciples in the upper room. In modern terms, we could say that the loosing is demonstrated by the bride leaving her father and mother. And that leaving starts with a walk down the aisle on the arm of her father to her waiting groom. We could say that that walk down the aisle to her waiting groom is the journey to Sinai, accompanied by her father. And at the end of the aisle, there is face to face, and the governmental covenant is instituted of full union, face to face. And she is completely separated from father and mother. So once the colt, the ben, the firstborn son, who gets a double portion of inheritance, the firstborn, the ben in Aramaic, the one ready to take over his father's business and carry the burden and the weight of heaven, and the charge of heaven's blueprint. Once that colt is face to face with Jesus, he receives multiple garments, and Jesus is seated upon those garments. And for the colt, the honor of carrying the king is enough. No one gives the colt any attention after Jesus is seated on it. All the focus is on Jesus. No one shouts, "All hail to the wonderful colt." He is practically hidden by the garments, and Jesus gets all the attention, all the honor, and all the glory. Now, Jesus could have walked into Jerusalem, but there was an ancient Israelite custom that a king rode on a donkey. Soldiers rode on horses, but a king rode on a donkey. That's why you see Solomon being taken on a donkey down to the Gihon to be anointed king under David's instruction. So, precious man-child, at this juncture, we have come to the time of loosing. We have come to the time where the mouth of Jesus is uttering over his colt that has been waiting for him, his colt that is bound at the way where the paths meet. The mouth of Jesus is uttering this governmental decree. Loose him and bring him to me. Loose them and bring them to me, as Matthew 21 verse 2 says. And the supreme authority in that voice is so all-powerful that anything that has inferior claim on your life that is binding you has to let you go. I pray that you hear this in the spirit, resounding in your spirit this morning, that there's a decree from the throne of heaven to loose you and bring you to Jesus, because full union is heaven's appointment for you, carrying the glory of the King is heaven's appointment for you. Carrying the burden and the charge of heaven into the city is heaven's appointment for you. May you experience, precious Manchild Company, the awakened ones, the ones covered by the redemption price. May you experience full liberation from everything that has held you back, from everything that has bound you, from everything that you have chafed against while you wait heaven's perfect timing. In the mighty name of Jesus.